How's it, everyone? It's Jamie Lee coming in with my first episode of Inside the Beauty Room. In today's episode, we are definitely going to start on the subject of love and relationship. And if you already watched my introduction, I've already kind of broached the subject. Kind of want this to be the first stepping stone because it's the one thing that everyone can relate to. It's the one thing that everyone has either experienced from family members, a relationship, friendship is love. Like, it's the most common ground that, connects everyone together. And it's one of the biggest topics inside the beauty room. So I thought, what better place to start than there? And I have the absolute best story to start with. Like, we're just going to come out swinging. However, I do want to give a small disclaimer. You guys, forgive my ignorance if I pronounce or say anything wrong. I am originally from Honolulu, Hawaii, and I was born there, raised there, so my English is not really my first language. And I'm not talking like I speak native Hawaiian or I speak, another language. Our first language when I was growing up is called Pidgin, which is pretty much broken English, which officially I think now I saw on the internet that it's an official language. So kudos. I don't speak a language, but I could speak Pidgin really well. Anyway, so being that I've been in California for the past 11 years, I've really had to step up my grammar, my proper English. But till this day, it's a struggle. I'm trying my best. You'll hear a lot of that, and not to mention I have the worst dyslexia, so I say things totally backwards. So this podcast is totally going to be great, entertaining. Just stay with me, track with me. If something seemed off and backwards, just try to unscramble it for yourself. I'm sure it's not that difficult, okay? But I just wanted to give that disclaimer out there. All right, so this story is the first thing I want to start with when we're talking about client and beautician relationship. And there's many stories to tell, even prior to hers. But this particular interaction I had with a client has impacted my life immensely, and hers as well, that it's at the forefront. And I feel like this is the best description on the relationships between the beautician and clients and how much that can impact us outside the beauty room and in our actual lives. So get ready for it. We're just gonna swing with this story. This is a big one. So I had this client who came in for the first time. I have never met her in my life, right? She's a total new client. And at that time, it was like ending 2020, beginning 2021, I think it was, when I met her. So when everything opened up and we could go back to work, I was doing permanent makeup, tattooing. So it was the forefront of my business at that time. And she was coming in for me to do her eyebrows. So I meet her, and she would do the introduction. I walk her through everything, and it's time to start the procedure. And of course, it's like your first time client. So you're going to start the basis, where you're from, how many kids you have, what do you do for work, and the conversation just builds. So if you're not familiar though, permanent makeup can last, like the appointment can be at least anywhere between 3 to 5 hours, especially when you're a beginning artist. And at that time I was a starter artist, and so it took me a while because I took my time. So we were together for quite some time, so we got to know each other really well. We broached the subject on our relationships. At that time, she was married, she had a kid, she had been married for quite some time, but she was unhappy, and I related. I was like, yeah, at that time I was in a relationship with my ex, and we had kids, and I was unhappy. And the conversation just kept growing, and we came to realize that we were in the same boat. And the boat was, we're both in these relationships. We've worked so hard. We put so much effort. We put so much love, but we're still unhappy because it was very unhealthy. It was very toxic for both of us, It was like every time we found the courage to leave, our significant others or our partner would do something and we overthink everything, and we're like, oh, maybe I should stay. Maybe it'll be okay. Maybe it's just a bad time right now. And then, we work it out. Only for it to, not too long after, like it's good for a period and then it's crap again, and it's, you want to leave. And it was like a constant pattern for both of us, right? So we're kind of just sitting there and relating stories and comparing stories, and it was pretty much similar. So then she looks at me and she goes, Jamie, this kind of the story you and I are going through is kind of like the theory of the frog in the boiling water. Have you heard that theory or that story? And I was like, it sounded familiar, but I was like, no, tell me, like, talk to me, because this is getting deep. And the experiment goes, when you want to cook a frog, somebody will put boiling hot water on the stove, right? And the water is boiling. And then you put the frog in there. What's the frog going to do? Immediately jump out. Like, the sensors click on and the frog's like, hell no, jumps out, right? But, she said, but if you put a frog in lukewarm water, right? The frog will sit there. And then you slowly just play with the temperature, and you bring it up, like, just enough to make the frog uncomfortable but not jump out. And right when you see it like about to jump, you turn the water down so the frog doesn't jump. And you keep doing that. Slowly the frog's being cooked alive and doesn't even realize it. And I was like, yeah. She goes, if you think about it, that's us. And you know the moral of the story, right? And I was like, yeah. And she goes, yeah, the frog dies. So is that us? Like, are we staying our relationship, and every time the water boils and we want to jump out, they turn the water down? That makes us stay. But eventually the environment itself is still toxic and we're still dying. We're just slowly dying. And the moral of the story is the frog eventually dies. And I was shook. Oh my God. I don't know what it was about that story that made it so vivid. And even she laying there was kind of like, yeah. After that, I feel like her and I were both trying to process what she had said for the duration of the appointment, you know? And I mean, other things came up and we talked about a bunch of stuff, but what she had said out loud really resonated. We both was just like, okay. The appointment came to an end, and, you know, her brows came up beautiful. And, she went on her way. I gave her a hug. I said, thank you for the conversation. You know, I hope you love your brows. And she goes, no, thank you for the conversation. You know, it was really good. And I'm so happy with my brows. So, you know, it was a win-win. And she left. A year goes by. I have not seen this woman again. She's not called me. I haven't done a touch-up. Like, I have no communication with her at all, right? And so she finally reaches out a year later, and she's like, Jamie, I think I need to touch up on my eyebrows. Can you do it? I said, perfect. And I was so excited to see her because so much had happened after that appointment that I seen her. And so the day finally came, and she walks in and she's like, hey, Jamie. And I gave her the biggest hug. And she embraced me too, right? And we're both hugging. And I said, oh my God, I have to thank you so much, because our last encounter, our last appointment really made me realize a lot of stuff. And I left my relationship. And she pushed me back and she goes, so did I. And we both just laughed and like we embraced each other again. And yeah, we had like a deep conversation afterwards about what happened, how it processed. And I'm not gonna lie, it shook me to the core that I repeated the story to not a lot, but those who I saw was in the same situation. And even when I repeated the story to other clients of, you know, sharing the information on a different outlook, you know, how to look at your toxic relationship, they were shook as well. Because I don't know, it was just the visual, you know, it was different outlook on it, and it really had a lot of my clients shook. And I told her, I said, oh my God, I've told so many people who are in the same situation as us, I've repeated your story, and I feel like it's impacted so many people. And she's like, oh my God, I'm not responsible. I hope I'm not responsible for all these breakups. I'm like, same, but I feel like it needs to be said. You know, if you know the information, if you share the experience and you have that information, share it. If you see somebody else in need, is what I always say. And so she laughed, and yeah, it definitely was a conversation that changed both our lives. Now today she comes in for waxing, and I wax her full face, her eyebrows, and she comes in like once a month. So we catch up and we maintain our relationship, and it's just, that's how the client relationship grows. And we help each other navigate, like, how are you doing now single, and you know, the chaos after. And I don't know, there's something about that that's so embraceful, to know that you're not the only one going through something like this or in a similar situation, and people are doing it every day. It's nice for someone to have space for you who can understand what you're going through. So I just thought that story was forefront and the greatest story ever, right? So I'm gonna ask you, are you in a toxic relationship? And if you are you the frog in the water? I mean, don't shoot the messenger that it changed my life, so that story is probably going to change yours or somebody out there, you know? Because eventually, honey, the frog dies. You're just slowly dying. So what's the purpose of that, you know? Yeah. You can see why I started with that particular story. Because, you know, we out here, we trying to save lives. We trying to make a difference out there. Don't shoot the messenger. But if you enjoyed it, if you got something out of it, please don't forget to like, share with a friend, follow, subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. And let me know what else you want me to talk about. I do have a list of things that we're going to go over, especially like when it comes to women's health and mental health and body health and other crazy, funny stories out there. So stay tuned, you guys. All right. Thanks.